Another very lovely evening out there to all of you, my dearest of friends. We left off in Isaiah 32, where we're speaking of the fruitfulness of the millennial reign and how much better that it's going to be than this old place that we know of right here. But let's pick up in Isaiah 33. Woe to thee that spoilest, and thou wast not spoiled, and dealest treacherously, and they dealt not treacherously with thee. When thou shalt cease to spoil, thou shalt be spoiled. And when thou shalt make an end to deal treacherously, they shall deal treacherously with thee. This prophecy, spoken before the Assyrian invasion, shows that this seemingly unstoppable army will in fact be stopped. Those who did the plundering will be plundered and will be dealt with treacherously by others. Verse 2, O Lord, be gracious unto us. We have waited for thee. Be thou their arm every morning, our salvation also in the time of trouble. At the time of the tumult the people fled. At the lifting up of thyself the nations were scattered. Notice how Isaiah, upon seeing this, he breaks out into prayer, deep, heartfelt prayer. And notice also whom Isaiah is praying for. He's not just praying for himself, he's praying for the nation, but take note of this. We have waited for thee. Be thou their arm every morning, meaning their strength. And it's believed by the commentators that he's talking about the army of the Judaic army at that time. And that really tells us a lot about how it is right for a nation to pray for the soldiers and whom lay their lives on the line. Even if you disagree with the campaign of your nation or whatever, then you still have to really pray for these young men, in whom are, there's a lot of 18-year-olds that have went to their deaths. I couldn't imagine going to my death at 18 years old. That's literally half my life ago. And 18-year-olds die horribly, horribly die. Not naturally in a bed or something. Let's continue. Verse 4, And your spoils shall be gathered like the gathering of the caterpillar. As the running to and fro of locusts shall he run upon them. The Lord is exalted, for he dwelleth on high. He hath filled Zion with judgment and righteousness. Now don't pass up what's being said right here. Speaking of the Assyrians, and your spoil shall be gathered like the gathering of the caterpillar. So what the Assyrians gathered on their way down to Jerusalem would be gathered up by the Jews at the after their decimation, the night of the death angel come down upon them. Though the description does suit the Assyrian campaign against the surrounding nations, we also see language which can be applied to the latter days Antichrist. Just as the Assyrian army was decimated before Jerusalem, so it will be for the Antichrist forces at the Battle of Armageddon. The remnant will then partake in the Antichrist spoils. Verse 6, And wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times, and strength of salvation. The fear of the Lord is his treasure. Behold, their valiant ones shall cry without, meaning outside. The ambassadors of peace shall weep bitterly. The highways lie waste, the wayfaring man ceaseth. He hath broken the covenant. Pay attention to this. He hath broken the covenant. He hath despised the cities. He regardeth no man. The earth mourneth and languisheth. Lebanon is ashamed and hewn down. Lebanon up here, north of Israel. Sharon is like a wilderness, and Bashan and Carmel shake off their fruits. Now once again, notice how the covenant is broken. Though the broken covenant spoken of here can be applied to that of 2 Kings 18:14, we must also remember how the Antichrist breaks the peaceful covenant after 3.5 years. Remember, he makes a 7-year peace treaty with Israel and the Middle East and all this, and suddenly he breaks it at the 3.5 year mark. And you'll see right after the breaking of this covenant how all these places are in a state of unrest, how the whole land seems to start going a little crazy. Then notice what happens immediately after all of this unrest happened. Now will I rise, saith the Lord. Now will I be exalted. Now will I lift up myself. Ye shall conceive chaff. Ye shall bring forth stubble. Your breath as fire shall devour you. And the people shall be as the burnings of lime. As thorns cut up shall they be burned in the fire. Now the Lord rises up, and he does his work. further showing of God displaying his power so openly for all the world to take notice in a single event, both in the overnight annihilation of the mighty Assyrian army as well as at the Battle of Armageddon. Do not forget about how whenever Christ comes down here, he just annihilates this army of the entire world, and the whole world is going to hear about how Jesus annihilated them. This is going to be a worldwide known event. Jesus's entry into setting up his kingdom of the world, the new king of the world, will arrive down here, and all the earth's inhabitants, in whom most of which will not believe in him, they'll hear about how he enters, and he enters in a huge way. No one's ever entered like this, not even on a small scale, really. You don't see anyone entering the way that Christ is going to enter. He enters with a humongous army and splits this Mount of Olives, annihilates these people, and the whole world knows just his power immediately upon taking the throne. Yes, he's the Prince of Peace, but he can also do the most destruction of any being. And just as the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, so will be the beginning of the world knowing Christ in person. They'll fear him first. Look at what he's done to all these people in just a moment. Look, just look at how powerful that he is. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and they will fear him at the very start. Hear, ye that are far off, that what I have done, and ye that are near acknowledge my might. The sinners in Zion are afraid. Fearfulness hath surprised the hypocrites. Who among us shall dwell with the devouring fire? Who among us shall dwell with everlasting burnings? Take note of how it says the sinners in Zion are afraid. During the millennial reign, the guilt a man shall feel against any sin of any kind will be magnified a thousand times over. I mean, if you feel bad about your sin now, the millennial reign, you'll hate to sin. It'll be something completely, it'll be like the plague almost. He that walketh righteously and speaketh uprightly, he that despiseth the gain of oppressions, that shaketh his hands from holding of bribes, that stoppeth his ears from hearing of blood, and shutteth his eyes from seeing evil, he shall dwell on high. His place of defense shall be the munitions of rocks, or the tower, the besieging tower of rocks. Bread shall be given him, his waters shall be sure. Thine eyes shall see the king and his beauty. They shall behold the land that is very far off. The land that is very far off, the upright man will see. We may apply the words to the heavenly Israel, Benson commented. To the heavenly Israel, that land which is very far off, which believers behold by faith, and comfort themselves with the prospect of it in evil times, this land far off. Thine heart shall meditate terror. Where is the scribe? Where is the receiver? Where is he that counted the towers? Thou shalt not see a fierce people, a people of a deeper speech than thou canst perceive, of a stammering tongue that thou canst not understand. Now don't be thrown off by the language right here. It says, thine heart shall meditate terror. That means the memories of the old evil times. It'll be very difficult to reckon, but you'll have to actually think about them in order to know terror at all. But also notice something that not many people talk about, even myself, but it will be quite the strange thing. At the Tower of Babel were the languages of men mixed up. All the languages of the world. Up until then, the world only had one language. During the days of Noah's flood, which would have been very appropriate because Noah, it would have had to have been one language because Noah was the only real preacher at that time. He was the only preacher. So everyone who was alive had to know what he was saying. But after the flood of Noah at the Tower of Babel, the people were gathered together and all the languages were, well, during the millennial reign, those languages are done away, and there'll be a pure language given unto people that we see. Thou shalt not see a fierce people, a people of deeper speech, a stammering tongue that thou canst not understand. There'll not be any of that in the millennial reign. In Zephaniah 3:9 we read, for then will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may all call upon the name of the Lord to serve him with one consent. Which really does tell us something about the holiness of Christ. If we're to worship him, we can't even use a language that has been polluted with cursings and vulgarities and lies and filth. But nothing sinful, even a pure language will be given to us. That's why, I mean, a lot of people talk about how we might all be speaking Hebrew in heaven. I don't think that at all. It's a whole new language. Everything is new. He says, "Behold, I make all things new." Even our language, everything is new and pure and beautiful. It might even be like a song or something very, very lovely. Look upon Zion, the city of our solemnities. Thine eyes shall see Jerusalem, a quiet habitation, a tabernacle that shall not be taken down. Not one of the stakes thereof shall ever be removed, neither shall any of the cords thereof be broken. But there the glorious Lord will be unto us a place of broad rivers and streams, wherein shall go no galley with oars, neither shall gallant ship pass thereby. For the Lord is our judge, the Lord is our lawgiver, the Lord is our king. He will save us. This is so obviously pointing to Christ. How the Jews can read this, how all the Israelites could read this and not gather that God would be a man sitting upon a throne. See, the Jews, they don't believe that the Messiah is God in the flesh. They believe he's like a type of literal, like a type of David, born of man and woman, earthly man and woman. But verses like this, listen to the words of this. For the Lord is our judge, the Lord is our lawgiver, the Lord is our king, he will save us. It's talking about the Lord sitting upon the throne. And I mean, I really, anyway. Thy tacklings are loosed. They could not well strengthen their mast. They could not spread the sail. Then is the prey of a great spoil divided. The lame take the prey. I love that. The lame take the prey. Those in whom are humbled are exalted. And the inhabitants shall not say, I am sick. The people that dwell therein shall be forgiven their iniquity. No sickness during that time. The lame take the prey. Once again, Jesus said it best. He says, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Speaking to the Jews now, you have to remember, whenever Jesus was on the earth, he was preaching unto the Jews, and the Jews' great hope, even what Isaiah is alluding to, is the millennial reign. He's also, sometimes they'll speak of the eternal New Jerusalem, new heaven, new earth, but most of the time, it's always just the millennial reign. That's their great hope, that they would reign, because they've always been so oppressed and hated by all their neighboring nations. So the meek shall inherit the earth, Jesus says. Well, meek in the Greek is praus, meaning mild or humble. Humble. That's what a man should be. You can be the strongest man around and still be meek. You can be the biggest guy walking about and still be very meek and mild. Be humble. Which the world has a very distorted view of what meek means. They view meek as weak. And this is where the world errs. I mean, it errs all the time, and distorting the meaning of what Christ was saying. They believe Jesus is weak. Jesus is meek. He is the strongest being, though. It's just terrifying. He's absolutely terrifying. Chapter 34. Come near, ye nations, to hear, and hearken, ye people. Let the earth hear, and all that is therein, the world, and all things that come forth of it. For the indignation of the Lord is upon all nations, and his fury upon all their armies. He hath utterly destroyed them. He hath delivered them to the slaughter. You cannot get a more blatant talk of these last days than this. All nations, all the world. He has destroyed all armies. Matthew Henry commented on this. Here is a prophecy of the wars of the Lord, all which are both righteous and successful. All nations are concerned, and as they have had the benefit of his patience, so all must expect to feel his resentment. Our thoughts cannot reach the horrors of that awful season to those found opposing the Church of Christ. You see, evil people, they believe that God is going to take it easy on them. They, while, and it's easy to think that because they're very self-deceived. And unless you know your Bible, you're not going to know they live in a constant state of spiritual blindness to their own detriment, mind you, because this horror is thrust upon them. It's just, in a moment, they're consumed with terrors, it says. I mean, it's just so unbearably frightening, unbearably what's going to happen to these folks. Their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses, and the mountains shall be melted with their blood, and all the host of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled together as a scroll, and all their hosts shall fall down as the leaf falleth off from the vine, and as the falling fig from the fig tree. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down from Idumea, upon Idumea, meaning Edom, upon Idumea, and upon the people of my curse to judgment. Edom or Idumea representing all the nations of the world, just as Moab represented them in previous studies. Verse 6, the sword of the Lord is filled with blood. It is made fat with fatness, and with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of the kidneys of rams. For the Lord hath a sacrifice in Bozrah, and a great slaughter in the land of Idumea, Edom. Now notice right here really quickly, because it says how this sword of the Lord is filled with blood. It is made fat with fatness, and with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of the kidneys of rams, and all these typical sacrifices of the Old Testament. Of course, this is symbolism. The idea of sacrifice was always connected with that of slaughter, as the animals were slaughtered before they were offered. So here the idea is that there would be a great slaughter in Idumea, that it would be so far of the nature of a sacrifice that they would be devoted to God and to his cause. Verse 7. Now this is quite the controversial verse. And the unicorns shall come down with them, and the bullocks with the bulls, and their land shall be soaked with blood, and their dust made fat with fatness. For it is the day of the Lord's vengeance, and the year of recompenses for the controversy of Zion. Now I have been asked before in church, someone asked me once, well, why does the Bible mention unicorns? Well, of course, the devil, just like he corrupts the eye and the pyramid, he corrupts a lot of things that God has made. And but he's turned our vision of a unicorn into a horse with one horn and flying on a rainbow and all of that. He's made it a fantasy, is what he's done. And it was an actual animal back then. They talk about this in answersingenesis.org. The Elasmotherium, an extinct giant rhinoceros, provides another possibility for the unicorn's identity. The beast it has a 33-inch long skull. It has a huge bony protuberance on the frontal bone, consistent with the support structure for a massive horn. Now, this was a literal beast that used to exist. I mean, and some people also believe that it may be the rhinoceros as well. We don't really know, but unicorn, that is, it wasn't some little thing. I mean, it would much more fit something along these lines. And it really wouldn't surprise me that Satan would turn such a horrifying looking beast into some little flaky thing. He seems to do this a lot. We see this with very effeminate individuals, and a lot of leftists are like this. How they're, I've seen men in whom they act more like a woman than women do. Verse 9, and the streams thereof shall be turned into pitch, and the dust thereof into brimstone, and the land thereof shall become burning pitch. It shall not be quenched day nor night. The smoke thereof shall go up forever. From generation to generation it shall lie waste. None shall pass through it forever and ever. Verse 11, but the cormorant and the bittern shall possess it. The owl also and the raven shall dwell in it. And he shall stretch out upon it the line of confusion and the stones of emptiness. They shall call the nobles thereof to the kingdom, but none shall be there, and all her princes shall be nothing. And thorns shall come up in her palaces, nettles and brambles in the fortresses thereof, and it shall be an habitation of dragons, and a court for owls. The wild beast of the desert shall also meet with the wild beast of the island, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow, and the screech owl, here's a controversial part right here. And the screech owl also shall rest there and find for herself a place of rest. Now, of course, this is talking about the literal screech owl, but the Hebrew word here used is Lilith. Screech owl, or Lilith in Hebrew, appears to be a creation of the Babylonian demonology. This Lilith plays a great part in the Talmudic demonology. The Kabbalistic rabbis forged a whole legend in which this spirit is said to have taken a feminine form to deceive Adam and to have united herself to him. She's known in these cults as Adam's first wife. She is mentioned in the Bible only here, the name Lilith, that is. What is this legend of Lilith that they came up with? One story, there's multiple stories about her. One story tells that Lilith refused to lay beneath Adam during sex. She believed they were created equal, both from the dust of the earth, thus she should not have to lay beneath him. After Adam disagreed, Lilith fled the Garden of Eden to gain her independence. Adam told God that Lilith had left, and God sent 3 angels to retrieve her. The 3 angels found Lilith in a cave bearing children, but Lilith refused to come back to the garden. The angels told her they would kill 100 of her children every day for her disobedience. In revenge, she is said to rob children of life and is responsible for the deaths of stillborn infants and crib deaths. Male children are at risk of Lilith's wrath for 8 days after birth until circumcision, and girls are at risk for 20 days, according to legend. After the angels' departure, Lilith tried to return to the garden, but upon her arrival, she discovered that Adam already had another mate, Eve. Out of revenge, Lilith had sex with Adam while he was sleeping and stole his seed. With his seed, she bears Lilium, earthbound demons, to replace her children killed by the angels. Lilith is also said to be responsible for males' erotic dreams and night emissions and so forth. So you and I, we read about this Lilith and we think, oh, what a horrible, demonic, evil being. But no, the world, they don't. They even put on a Lilith concert. They were doing tours in honor of this Lilith in order of supporting feminism. Now, this was years ago. She's a very praised figure among the liberals and leftists of today. But of course, that's not what Isaiah's talking about. He's literally talking about the screech owl. He even goes on in the next verse, verse 15, and he expounds on this. There shall the great owl make her nest and lay and hatch and gather under her shadow. There shall the vultures also be gathered. Speaking of the decimated places that are going to be destroyed at the time of Christ's return. There shall the vultures also be gathered, every one with her mate. Seek ye out of the book of the Lord, and read. No one of these shall fail. None shall want her mate. For my mouth it hath commanded, and his spirit it hath gathered them. Now this book of the Lord that Isaiah is talking about is pretty much what the Old Testament that we have went over. Not just the book of Isaiah, but also all the writings before him. Seek these things out. They've been told to you. And he hath cast the lot for them, verse 17, and his hand hath divided it unto them by line. They shall possess it forever. Speaking of these vultures, from generation to generation shall they dwell therein. Chapter 35, a short chapter right here. And we're picking up on the subject of the Jewish people, their return. The wilderness and the solitary place shall be glad for them, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose. It shall blossom abundantly and rejoice, even with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given unto it, the excellency of Carmel and Sharon. They shall see the glory of the Lord. Now that's the plain of Sharon, which Carmel was found right in that very vicinity. So it's down here. So it's both the Gentiles and the Jews. All would rejoice at this time, because the Lord is here. They shall see the glory of the Lord and the excellency of our God. Strengthen ye the weak hands, and confirm the feeble knees. Say to them that are of a fearful heart, Be strong, fear not. Behold, your God will come with vengeance, even God with a recompense. He will come and save you. Strengthen one another, encourage one another. Yeah, it's a terrifying thing what we're in if we just stop and ponder on it. and facing death. I mean, it could be set that we die tomorrow. Who knows? Or a rapture happen tomorrow. See, we live in a constant state of unknowing. So it's best to focus on what we do know, and that is the Lord is with us. He's given us these promises. He's never lied. If I'm here, Christ is with me. If I die, I'm with Christ. I win either way. I win. We're all winners if you're a Christian. Isaiah 35:5. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf shall be unstopped. Then shall the lame man leap as a hart, and the tongue of the dumb sing. For in the wilderness shall waters break out, and streams in the desert. This is telling us obviously about when Christ first came. Then the eyes of the blind will be open. He did that all. Well, that's also going to reoccur at his return. He's going to do that again. An extraordinary prophecy fulfilled incrementally. Spiritually, during the time of Isaiah, the eyes of the blind were opened spiritually. Literally, during the time of Christ's first appearance, he went about and literally opened up people's eyes, and both spiritually and literally during his millennial reign. Everything will be amplified in that day. Verse 7, and the parched ground shall become a pool, and the thirsty land springs of water. And the habitation of dragons, where each lay, shall be grass with reeds and rushes. And a highway shall be there, and a way, and it shall be called the way of holiness. The unclean shall not pass over it, but it shall be for those, the wayfaring men, though fools shall not err therein. It's going to be a whole different world, my friends. No lion shall be there, nor any ravenous beast shall go up thereon. It shall not be found there, but the redeemed shall walk there, and the ransomed of the Lord shall return, and come to Zion with the songs and everlasting joy upon their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. It's amazing how you can just walk freely in that day. You don't have to worry about, lions, tigers, bears. Oh my, you haven't got to worry about any of that. You haven't got to worry about snakes. You haven't got to worry about anything, diseases, whatever. You ain't got to worry. So let us focus on these things, my friends. We have such great promises given unto us. It's just such a lovely, lovely thing that we are being promised, and that should strengthen us for right now, because all this is passing away, my friends. Well, we haven't got a very long time to do any of this. It feels like a long time for the moment, but in retrospect, it's very, very short. Passes as a spinning wheel, as the grass in the field. I thank you all for joining me once again, my dear friends. Lord willing, we're going to be getting into Isaiah 36, 37, and so on here very shortly. Lord of peace be with you. Amen.